everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Person Behind the Pen. So, we normally run this show every 2 weeks, and because of this particular book, Man, Money, and Mental Health, we have been running a 4-part series. This is the third week in a row, and I swear, every time I get up here now, I feel like I was just here yesterday. I don't know about you guys, but summer is disappearing rapidly. I don't know if you're a summer or a fall person. I'm a summer person. I'm sure you can see I'm quite tanned. And not thrilled about this. Lots of rain in New York. So let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. I really hope there's no rain and sunny skies. Do enjoy it for me. And want to definitely say hello to all our friends popping in. Christy, hello. Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with Christy. Some news. Adding Brilliant Writers is expanding, and Christy is going to be coming on board as my virtual assistant. All right, Jason Forehand, my good friend up in the house. Wow, 2 days. I get to go to New Rochelle with my husband and meet Jason and Jody for a barbecue dinner. It better be sunny down there, I swear. Oh, wait, up there. That's north of me. Just kidding. All right, and so nice to see you, Bill. Thank you so much for being here. All right, so we got another great show lined up today. You all know there isn't nearly enough conversation around men's mental health. And yes, money isn't there because that's probably the number one thing I would say that weighs on a man's mind when it comes to his family and providing. Guiding Brilliant Writers is known for its stigma-breaking anthologies. We first launched the Legacy Chronicles. Volume 4 will be coming out this year at Thanksgiving. That was followed by We Choose to Be More Than Our Diagnoses. Volume 2 launched this year. And now we are doing Man, Money, and Mental Health. We've already had inquiries to join Volume 2 next year. And I'm going to ask you to stay tuned for the launch date event. We're going to be doing some special giveaways, including somebody going to win the first annual scholarship to Guiding Brilliant Writers to be the first writer in volume 2 of this book, sponsored. All right, so let's get going here. We got lots of fun coming down the pike. And quick hello to Stephen Eng, my buddy just right here on Long Island with me. I don't know if it's raining out by you, but please, I'm going to blow my rain clouds your way. No, I'm just kidding, neighbor. I would not do that to you. Okay, so let's start bringing these guys up one by one here. They're all going to come on stage. And instead of introducing them as what they do and who they are, I'm going to tell you how I met them and who they are to me. Ready? Let's go. First to the stage, we got Jim Fielding. Jim, how are you?
Good. Hi, everyone.
Where are you joining us from?
I live in Atlanta, but I'm actually joining you today from Arlington, Virginia, looking across the river at Washington, D.C.
Nice weather out there?
It is nice today. Yeah, very nice.
Well, I'd be jolly, but I actually really like you, so. Oh, goodness. Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us here.
Sure.
That you are out and about. And let's talk about how I met Jim. Well, we're both members of the Outlier Project. And so Jim and I got in touch over there and then built this really nice beginnings of a friendship outside of there. And when I say outside of there, networks are huge. This is a big network. So, goodness gracious that I should get to meet all of the members. But I'm really glad Jim was one of the first ones I met. And we kind of just stayed in touch all this time. When this book came up, he was one of the people that I thought about. This gentleman is not only an extremely talented writer, published traditionally, which, mind you, it's quite difficult to get traditionally published. I love it's just his personality. He's very bubbly. He's very, like me, matter of fact, in his shares in his posts. He's not concerned to say what is on his mind. And I think a lot more men need to take a lesson from that. Jim, I can't thank you enough for being here with us.
Oh, my gosh. My total pleasure.
All right, so let's get Joe up here. Joe Hamrahi, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you for having me again. It's good to see all my close friends on here, including the two of you. And Jim and I have obviously reached out to each other back and forth, but Nick and I know also each other from the Outlier Project, but we're also Long Islanders and not too far away from each other. But I have now relocated to just outside of Sarasota, Florida 2 years ago. So, but just to make you feel any better, it's raining here too, so don't worry.
Ah, shucks. Let me pull the violins out. All right, listen. So yes, so looking forward to hopefully meeting up at some point. You know, we all travel around, but New York is New York, and a lot of people do end up in New York. Um, can't wait to meet you in person, of course. But thanks so much for saying yes to this project. And so I see my buddy out there chasing forehand, and I shared this recently in a live show with Mark Holden. I reached out to Jason and I said, "Hey, listen, who do you think might be interested in being in this book?" He came back with two names, Mark and you. And of course, I went, "Tit, tit, tit, tit." I love that the people within my community have so much overlap. Everybody isn't doing the same thing, everybody isn't advocating for the same thing, but we're all on the same page when it comes to using our skills and our heart to try to better humanity as a whole. And so it's really nice when I have friends that could pinpoint someone that would be interested in something like this. And Joe was like, "I'm on. That's it. Wow." Didn't want to know anything else. And when you have people like that join a project, without a doubt you have the right people in the book. So Joe, thank you again so much for being here.
Of course. I'm
All right.
excited to be part of this.
Up last and certainly not least, I'm gonna get his name right. It is Aram up in the house. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. How you doing?
Good, good. I see you joining us from your car, and you're out in Florida, right? How's the
Yeah,
weather?
yes. Stuck in the rain.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, yeah. So Jim, we definitely got to connect. Um,
Yes,
because we have a program in Atlanta,
I
and
know.
yeah, and Joe, you right here in Sarasota, man. I'm 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 in Naples.
Oh,
I'm
we're
actually
neighbors.
yeah. So and I actually have to go to Venice
Oh, nice.
for a manufacturing trip. So definitely we
We're going to
that
meet up.
yeah for sure.
See,
Yeah.
now get out, folks. If I was going to get into, which I was going to get into, all the things that can happen when you do join a project like this that is beyond the actual project, this is it. And so many of the guys have already met on Zoom, made plans. Joe Cullen is going to be heading down next month. Wait, no, just in September to Warriors Defined. That's being spearheaded by Candice Van der Zolen and Trevor Martin. Trevor Martin's writing in the book. Joe Cullen's writing the book. So they are going to be meeting up there later this month. All right. So Erin was actually introduced to me by Sweet Jane Luong. If you don't know Jane, go check out her post, especially on a Thursday, because you're going to see Theatrical Theodore, whom I absolutely adore. He is a very, very intelligent guy. And in fact, the other day I was telling her, say hello from cousin Nellie, and she said, "I will when he wakes up." I'm like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "Yeah, he gets up about 9 sometimes." I'm like, "Oh, a dog's life." Well, that is true. Definitely a dog's life. So, Era, I am going to start with you and I'm going to go backward. Really and truly, why did you join the book? That's the first very simple question I'm going to ask all of you guys. What does this project mean to you? Why men's mental health? Why did you say yes? Because this is a 3 month plus ish commitment, an investment of time, energy, and money. Yes, I do charge to work with me. And yeah, I know why you guys joined, but I want the audience to know why you joined.
I'd say it's a lot of reasons that why I joined the book, but I'd say hands down, um, I did a little like writing before just to try it. I never turned it in or anything, and I uncovered a lot of things about myself, right? That not that I didn't know, but you just pack these things away, and it felt so good to get it out. So that's the number one reason. And then people say, "Oh man, you need to write a book. You need to do this. You need to do that." And I agree. It's just trying to find the that enough time in the day, right? But that's really an excuse. So Jane, she brought it to me, and I was like, "Well, there's no need to say no, right?" And it was a perfect opportunity and put me in a position that it makes sense. It's time for growth, right? And so that's why I joined, because there's no perfect time to do anything. So you either do it or you don't. And that's pretty much. And I know the youth and young adults that I work with. I know this story can help them, right? I know because I'm vulnerable. I talk to them all the time about some of the things that I've been through, and that's how we build relationships is sharing our story. And you hit it on the note Sunday night um, when you said leaving something for your kids or your legacy, leaving something. So you know, I know for me, I need to start, documenting things to leave to my kids, right? And
Yeah,
so, what better time than now?
exactly. And legacy for me is about leaving something in people, not just for them. The material things, they're going to get that. We already know this. We're building what we're building in our lifetime, right? But I don't think that any of us are going to be considering on our deathbed all the material things we've got in our life. We're going to be thinking about all the people that touched ours and hope that we touch theirs in such a way that we will always be remembered. And when I think of mental health, there's fathers, there's brothers and uncles and sons and grandsons, and you know, there's men and women in the world. And as a man, you have the opportunity to join something like this, use your voice and spread your message much further than just the men within your family. So before we want to move on to Joe with that question, I want to say hi to my friend Leslie. Leslie is not only my dearest friend, 30-year gold standard line editor for Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing, she is also usually my remote producer. She, however, isn't feeling well tonight, and I am so grateful you're here. But we discussed you're going to lie down. So I'll be calling after to make sure you're lying down. Miss Natalie Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today. I do see you as well. Mary Kay, thank you for joining us as well. I see Lisa, Trini Favik, Trini Lisa Favik in the house. I'm sorry, I messed that up. And Liana, thank you for joining us too. So we actually have a couple people in the audience that are going to be writing in volume 2 of Legacy, the Legacy Chronicles, coming in at Thanksgiving. So this conversation is actually also overlapping around legacy. So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and share with us what was your reason for jumping on this project?
Well, I'm a big proponent of mental health in general. In general, there's a history in my family, and there's others that I'm very close to. So I've always been a supporter of being open and vulnerable. Those who know me know that I am pretty much an open book. Like I wear my heart on my sleeve. But I think over the past 3 or 4 years, I've gone through some different things and changes in my life that I think it's important to understand as, particularly with men. And I think, we go through things and we're told to keep things inside, or your emotions are going to make you, you know, just suck it up and handle it type of thing. And I think what you realize is that you go through periods of time, and I think I wrote this somewhere else, but all we all I really cared about was making sure that the people who I cared about were okay. And everyone, not everyone, but people on the outside see me and they see other us who are on this call and think we have it all together. And look, we are very blessed with lots of great things, but they don't know what's going on inside. What the weight of that is. If God forbid you lose your job and what happens to your family and all the things that come along with that. And I think we're just kind of told to suppress that. So I had done a podcast not too long before you asked Nick to do this, where I was extremely vulnerable on. I've also become, and a lot of you know this musician, Dax. I've listened to a lot of Dax's music in the last couple of years, and Dax talks a lot about men and mental health and the weight we carry and things we do. And that music got me through some difficult times. So I felt like it was a point for me to just continue to be open and share what I go through, what others are likely to go through. And when you talk about it, others are like, oh yeah, that's true. So interestingly enough, and Nick knows this, I wrote my chapter like in super speed. Um, I knew exactly what I was going to write, and it's been sitting there for a long time. So I just wrote it. And it just came out, and I'm very happy where it is. There's a lot of vulnerabilities in there about me that people will read about, but I hope that people get from that, particularly the people who are close to me, that the outside appearance is not always what's inside, and we need to be aware of that more often than not, because it could be very damaging and harmful.
Yes, absolutely. And you shared you were on a podcast, you shared you started being more vulnerable. And there is a natural flow of things, whether or not we see it. There are opportunities that come into our sphere that line up with the path that we are walking on. And sometimes people miss it, right? Or for whatever reason, they choose not to take it. And I'm really grateful that you did. You're tuning in out there, guys. And I really want to know at this very moment, like Joe says, what you're seeing on the outside is not necessarily what someone is feeling on the inside. And right now, I see lots of smiling pictures, profile pictures. Us all are on LinkedIn, I think. So at this very moment, if you are feeling something, I'd love to know what it is in the comments. If you're like, you know, I'm feeling very impatient today, the weather's bumming me out, I'm down, this is where we need to be able to open the conversation and talk to each other. Three of us up here in the rain, we get it. So again, thank you for joining us. Jim, my friend, what about you?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I love what the other men said. I mean, it was kind of a no brainer for me. As you said, I am a published author. So 3 years ago, I put out a book called All Pride, No Ego, where it's a leadership book, but it's also memoir, and I really exposed a lot and went for it. And um, that book completely changed my life. What I'm focused on, what I'm doing. I mean, from that book, I started a speaking business and my own podcast, and I went back to school to become an executive coach. I'm at an executive coaching conference right now in DC. Um, so I jumped at the chance. First off, I love Nick. She knows that, and I jumped at the chance because it allowed me to write a story in a different way than I normally write. Like I write leadership and business books, and I wanted to write. I had a story in me, kind of like you, Joe, that I wanted to tell. And particularly when she said men, money, and mental health, I also said, well, I want to represent as a gay man. And I asked her, I said, are there other gay men in it? Right? Because part of my story that people will see in my chapter is my relationship with my dad, which was fractured at times because of my truth and because of my story. And so I found it really healing and cathartic. And like you, Joe, I wrote it pretty fast. I think Nick was shocked, like, because I kind of like turned it in and she's like, you're done? And I'm like, well, I don't know. You'll tell me if I'm done. But it kind of flowed, right? And I'm excited about it because it's a style of writing I have not done before. Mine is very storytelling, very it's like a moment. There's a couple moments in there, but
Yes, it is indeed very storytelling. And Jason, I believe, read yours. So Jason and Timothy endorsed us for the book, right? So
oh,
they've already
nice.
had um, sneak previews, if you will. And we talked about the writing because it's past, present, and future, right? And so that style of
Hmm.
writing is developed over time. And what I love about doing an anthology project is that writers from everywhere are coming together. First time writers, people who have published, people who, really and truly never thought they would publish. And it makes it so much more interesting to be able to sit side by side with different people at different experiences, levels of experience. It allows you to learn much faster than if you were at, in a place where everybody already was at that same level. So, Jim, thank you so much for joining. I do
Sure.
also want to touch on, so I'm going to ask this question, and I want the men in the audience to answer as well, right? I know these three guys and their three stories. Their three stories are very different when it comes to the way they identify with money. I know this because I read them. So, how would you say that you identify with money today? And is that different than the way you identified with money, let's say 20, 30 years ago? Right? Understandably, we're growing older every day and supposedly wiser, right? But the world is the world, and money, the value of money is there. It's always there. So, has your perspective, has your the way your identity is tied with finance changed in the last 20 to 30 years or so? And if so, what do you think was the turning point for you? Aram?
Well, I say I was a kid, so 30 years ago I was 8. so so it's definitely changed. But I'd say just through my growth, wanting to invest more, uh, because as I said, I want to leave something for my kids, my family. And if you see it in my story, you see I've lost a lot of people that I care about, and I've seen a lot of those situations. Like when they're gone, it's all about money and who's gonna pay for this, and oh man, it's some of the worst stuff that you know you just learn a lot, right? And I don't want that to be it because that causes a whole nother stress and anxiety in itself that I don't want to pass on to my family. Um, I understand credit a lot better um, than I did, you know, early on in my adulthood. Um, so I understand financing. I mean, finance is a lot better. You know, the importance of buying a home versus renting a home, and vice versa. The importance of renting at certain times. Um, and just in the field that I work in, understanding like just banking in a whole different level, right? Learning because we're a 501c3, so we deal with a lot of donors, right? But then we learn different things about what to do with donor advised funds, what to do with this type of gift. You don't just spend it, right? You invest some of those donations, some of those gifts. Um, Also understanding that all money is not good money, and
That is a
and
good one. That
uh,
is a very good one.
and to always diversify your funds so that you're in a situation to be able to say no,
Hmm.
because that's in your power. Yes or no is powerful, right? And a lot of times, a lot of bad decisions are made because you literally cannot afford to say no. So you have to make a decision that you know is terrible, and that sucks, right? That life. I've been in those situations, and I hated the feeling of being in those situations. So I worked to bust my behind to never have to feel that feeling again. Um, and it wasn't that bad of a situation, but what scared me was, what if it was that bad? that how bad, what if I was in a way worse situation that I couldn't say no to, and the vulnerability that I felt. I just never wanted to feel that again, and I never wanted any kids or young adults or that come under my care to ever have to feel that. So that's some of the stuff that I've learned about money and finances. Uh,
Thanks for sharing that.
uh,
And Jason's agreeing with you because Jason is also running a nonprofit. So he also deals with donors and various grants and such like that. And right, you also have your own personal finances outside of the finances for the nonprofit. Um, when you read Aram's chapter, you're going to think, because sometimes we don't think about this, we can't take for granted that everyone is educated about money from a young age. Now, if you read Jim's chapter, very different story, right? Jim was. His father, from the very beginning, instilled in him save this when you work, do this with your money, do that with your money. And we aren't all born to the same situations, the same opportunities. We already know this. So, educating ourselves on finance is so important. And sometimes what you don't know, you just don't know. And Aram did learn, and he did learn how to put together a resume, how to something as basic that we think is so basic as a resume, right? Um, Understanding better how to deal with credit and all of these things. So I see a lot of men go later into life and they are making money. They don't know how to manage the money because they don't have.
can I add one last thing?
Yeah,
Because
of course.
I have to sign off because I have a 6:30 meeting. But when you when touching on that credit, I didn't know anything about utilization or resume building, on how to construct my resume and how every time I went for a job and it needs to match with the job. And I didn't know anything about credit utilization. And because I didn't, I became so angry. And I didn't know why I was angry. I thought the world was against me because I didn't know those two little things. But when I learned them, it really changed my life. To those two small things that I know that I thought was really small turned out to be life changing. And so I would say not knowing little small things can really take you down a dark road, because I heard a lot of people said a lot of mean things to people when I was the one that was wrong, right? And and so I spent a lot of time calling people too, over the over the last 10 years, still apologizing for what I didn't know, right? And you always want to try to give people flowers while they're here. But that would be my biggest take on money and finances. That if you don't understand it, it could take you down a really really deep dark road, um, and it could be really dangerous not understanding.
I really appreciate you sharing that. You know, a lot of people feel what's in their past is in their past and they don't want to share that, especially where they are now and what they've accomplished. But that is part of why you are here and why you are doing what you're doing, which is helping to educate other youth so they have these, what should really be very foundational tools to starting adulthood. So I know you have to jump. I want to thank you for taking the time to be here. Wherever you're off to, be safe, my friend. And we will
Absolutely,
chat very soon. Thanks a lot for
absolutely,
joining
will
us.
do. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
So I hope everyone's enjoying the conversation so far. You just got to hear a bit more about Aram's story. And I'm asking the guys this question so that you could understand this is 10 chapters, 10 different writers, and just on the stage with three. The way that they viewed money then and view money now, just generationally, traditionally, the way they grew up, the opportunities they had, all very different. And for men out there listening, if you don't know what you don't know, right, it is nothing to be ashamed of. There is there is information out there. I apologize. I'm trying to help Aram here come off the stage. Okay, there we go. Oops, I just kicked him off. I hope he didn't fall. Okay, Joe, let's move on to you. Talk to me. What's your identity with finance now? What was it then? Did something happen to like change that for you?
Well, I'm probably the different one in this call because I've been a CFO for 25 years. I'm a CPA, I have an MBA in accounting and all that other stuff. And my job is to manage people, help people manage their businesses and their money. So the irony of all that is, again, what you see and what you know about, it's not always the same thing. So I grew up with two parents who did not have a college education. My father was an immigrant from Iran, did the stereotypical cab driver thing for 10 years in Manhattan. Worked his way up, did really well in that. He owned his own medallion and sold it. And then he went into business because he always wanted to go into business. He tried to open his business. So he opened up an ice cream business in Comac, Nick. And within 1 year, he was out of business. And I was probably like 12 years old at that point. And I remember very vividly the whole situation because we almost lost our house because of it. Mm-hmm. Mm. And I think that part of that led into why I was so like I needed to take care of my family no matter what. The part about that though was I was never, even as a kid, I was never like, I don't think I've ever comprehended what it meant to potentially lose your house. But I don't think that was ever the part. I was just wanted my father to be okay. And I think that part of that was I didn't learn that lesson fast enough because all I kept doing was trying to make sure that my kids had everything they had in a much better life than we ever had. And they did. But in that process, I just worked like a slave and, just to make sure they got everything that they needed and went to good colleges. What I'll tell you is, so that's, 15, 20, they're all in their mid to late 20s now. And they're doing well. And that's the gift. But I lost a lot of their time with their lives. What I'll tell you now is that money means a lot less to me now, even as a person. I mean, not from a standpoint of running people's businesses, but for me personally. I joke about this a lot. I'm in Florida now. Yeah, I'm in an air-conditioned apartment. I'm wearing a sweater, but I'm wearing shorts. Like I don't get dressed up ever. I don't need fancy cars. I don't need things. I just need like peace. And I've reached the point where you go circle. Like I think we're conditioned to aspire to things, and a lot of that's attached to materialistic items. And look, I work with some people who have that they want to keep growing and building, and that I've kind of separated myself from that. I'd much rather drive down and sit on the beach at Siesta Key than it would be to sit here and grow this into a massive firm. This is what I'm doing now. So I'm a fractional CFO. I am doing this now to the last stage of my career, do the business, run the business that my father didn't. And the things I've learned and and what's important. And I'm making sure that even when I give advice, it's people's lives, it's their lives and their choices, not what someone else wants them to do or say. There's a Peloton, if anyone's a Peloton fan, I'm a former Peloton junkie. Dennis Morton used to say, like, I make suggestions, you make decisions. That's what I do. And you can't force people to do things. You help them along the way and you help educate them. Jason knows because we were going to do some stuff together, and I hopefully we'll still do some stuff together. And I'm all about educating people on the value of money, but also that it's not everything. And you shouldn't sell your soul for material or things. But unfortunately, there's an environment that we live into that fosters that. So that's kind of my story. At this point, it's been a wave of different parts where I needed to. So I've kind of gone full circle. So the last thing I'll say is that I say this also to clients. I think there's a thing that because of how we're conditioned, there's this everything's a new shiny object, right? So you want it because it's just about obtaining it. But then when you obtain it, you don't realize that it may not be it comes with other problems, and
Normally
that's,
problems.
I should say, not to quote
Yeah.
Biggie here, but it's sort of, it comes with that. And also it loses its luster once you achieve it. So I think that sometimes it's really important to understand, like, what makes, I want to make you happy, because we all go up to an extent, what brings you joy in life and what helps you bring joy to other people. So I said enough. I want to hear what Jim has to say too. So.
Well, Jason is sharing here. You're doing so much. Your heart for service and people is incredible. Thank you. And you guys will be absolutely doing some things together. Thanks for sharing that. On the heels of what Aram just shared, and I see Stephen, my friend here, and Stephen works in a library part-time. So I call him, he calls himself, and I agree, the author whisperer. He shares like the best information and always up and up for me. And it's easy to feel angry when you realize you weren't taught basic life skills in school, like money. You don't know what you don't know, and that makes stories like this all the more important. And now you have Joe here sharing that pretty much, from a young age, he observed how money could feel like lack of money could feel like a threat, right? And that kind of the direction that it sent him in. And I think a lot of us, as we get older, we come full circle and we realize that we did put material things first, even if the motivation was to better the lives of the people around us that we love. Big part of these conversations was to help alleviate that pressure by reaching men when they are younger to understand that there's equal value in other areas of their life other than just earning the money, right? That money cannot buy back the time for you, right? Even though he has now provided what he always felt he needed to provide. He is now at a stage in his life where he felt or feels some of the other things I didn't at that point in time. So these conversations have to come out. And these writers are here on this stage talking to people that they will never meet about their entire life and what money has done for or affected them in a negative way and how it has impacted their mental health. So I really hope that everybody out there is getting some value from this. Throw questions in the comments if you have any questions. This is the opportunity to speak to these gentlemen who are very much on a path for advocating to be mental health champions. You see the shirt going on here. You see the book on that side. You see the QR code. And yes, folks, the partnering shirt for the book is out and available right now. Go ahead, grab your shirt, start posting. I want to see the pictures of people in these shirts. We will have a raffle on launch day to see who's going to win that chapter scholarship to write in volume 2 next year. All right, Jen, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, well, my whole chapter is about relationship with money and mental health. And as Nick knows, my dad, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, very Midwestern dad. My dad was a fireman. And he told me early on, you have champagne tastes on a beer budget. And so he said, there's no way that you are ever going to keep up just off of allowance. And so I got my first job at 13. And I tell this story in the book. So I got a summer job at 13. My dad signed the work permit and drove me to work because obviously I couldn't drive myself, and then picked me up every day. And what he did with my first paycheck, and I remember my first paycheck, and I'm old. I think I'm one of the older people in the book. And these are like old handwritten paychecks. He drove me to the firefighter credit union and we opened up a savings account. And he mandated that I put 50% of every paycheck in the bank, and that 50% was then my money. And the entire chapter, what my dad taught me, and my dad has passed away and been gone for 14 years, but he always said to me, his name was Jim too, and so he called me Jimmy. He said, Jimmy, there's a difference between what you want and what you need. And that was the entire, his theory of money. And so, like, an example of, like, people ask me, well, how did that manifest? Back to school shopping. Like, he was a provider. My dad was a provider. He would set a budget for back to school shopping, and he would look and say, okay, Sears Tough Skins are $20, right? And he'd say, you could get 3 new pair of jeans, which meant the budget was 60, but I wanted Calvin Klein. And so, because Brooke Shields, that's how old I am, Brooke Shields looked really good in her Calvin Kleins, and I wanted to look good in my Calvin Kleins. He would loan me the difference between the Sears Tough Skin and the Calvin Klein. So if the Calvin Kleins were 30 and the Tough Skins were 20, I owed him $10, right? And not only did he introduce me to a savings account, he introduced me to the almighty ledger, which I talk about in my chapter 2. And it was like a handwritten, Joe, I love that you're a fractional CFO, like a 1950s accounting ledger with like the green pages and the red columns. And he would literally write, 1979, back to school, $50, right? And it was just a running total. And thank God he did not charge interest. But anytime there was a difference between what I thought I needed versus what he thought, or what I wanted versus what he needed, that delta went into the ledger. And I literally paid the ledger off when I was 30 years old. And I wrote him a check before I ever bought my first house. I wanted to clear, that was a debt that I had, and I was very aware of it. And so literally every purchase I've made in my life, including today, I'm 61 years old, I will literally be at the car dealer and he'll be like in my head saying, you want the Porsche, you need the Chevrolet. Like, he literally is like in my head. And so my whole driver, a little bit, Joe, like yours, my whole driver in my career was, I want to make enough money to buy what I want, not what I need. Like, that was my thing. Like, if I wanted to go on vacation, I wanted to go on vacation. If I want, and I also knew, because of him again, that I wanted to make sure I could live a good, healthy life for a long time. And my mom is still with us. She has dementia, so I manage my mom's money. And so it was a lot of just making sure there was enough money to keep her safe and to keep her healthy. Because when he was passing, he said to me, like, you're in charge of your mom. She can't take care of herself. So it was like, this passing of, he was the man of the family. Now I'm the man of the family. But literally every major purchase I make, I hear him from the time I was 13. So I just constantly hear, Jimmy, there's a difference between what you want and what you need, honestly, in his voice, not in my voice. I hear it in his voice. But he taught me, to your point, and to Aram's point and Joe's point, I mean, he taught me the value of money. He taught me the value of savings. He taught me the value of hard work for what you want. Like, all of those, he was putting these kind of ethics and values into me without me fully knowing it. And by the way, my sister had a ledger too. It wasn't just a male thing. I love my sister to death. I will just tell the story because we're being honest. I literally said to her, like, the week before she was getting married, did you pay off your ledger? Because dad and mom were paying for and she said, no. Like, she's like, does he really want the money? And I was like, you better freaking pay off that ledger before he walks you down the aisle. And she's like, I don't have the money. So I loaned my sister the money to pay off the ledger.
No interest.
And no
Do you have a ledger
interest.
now?
Yeah,
Do you
no
have a ledger
interest.
now?
No, I literally was like, my sister's name is Jill. I'm like, Jill, you cannot get married owing mom money or owing dad money. You just can't. So I am going to pay off your, and then she paid me back. So, it's like a whole pay it forward. But
That's great.
he did teach me really young, including, and I tell people this all the time, like I've been working since I was 13. Like I got my first paycheck at 13. And really have never stopped. So I'm 61. So what's that? 48 years,
See, look at these great stories, guys. I mean,
Yeah.
It's if it makes you feel any better, we're not too far. I'm 57, and
Yeah. So
I
you
remember
know.
Tough Skins too, and Calvin Klein.
Yes. Yes. And I was husky. Tough skins.
Yes, I was the same
But
thing.
yeah, I was husky.
oh,
But
too much. I
But
love it.
now it's funny because Joe, you're a CFO. Now being 61, you start to look about
Yeah,
retirement, right? And you start to look at when am I going to have Medicare and when is Social Security and all like it does change.
but I think
Like,
Jim made a really good point too. Despite, I mean, our families and our environment and the people in our lives shape us, right? And I think that
totally.
both. I mean, it was two different directions of how it worked. And with the part that I didn't finish was like after my father lost the business, he went back and he worked in a warehouse until he died. And he had it's still that work ethic, right? He still was always
Hmm.
going to take care of his family no matter what the case may be. And the one thing I miss like about that, I wish I would have taken that lesson from that I don't have to kill myself. So if something goes wrong, and this is for people to listen to because it's important, you don't get to control everything that happens in your environment. We see layoffs every day, right? So if these things happen, you try your best to find a way after that. And there's some really people on this that I know, like Jason, who's gone through some really difficult situations and have turned it around into miraculous, amazing things. So don't be so hard on yourself, as I guess is what I'm about to, really want to say, is because we all go through it. And that's an incredible story, Jim. So, by the way,
Yeah.
I did use ledgers at one point. So, yeah.
Speaking of ledger,
God love the ledger.
Timothy Gleason here from Australia, a very good friend of mine.
Hi.
Um, so he is one of the endorsers for the book, and I selected Timothy because he does a lot of work raising funds over the years for suicide awareness, and Guiding Brilliant Writers always would uh, try to donate to these fundraisers. And Timothy started out as a taxi driver, and he made the decision to bite the bullet and go back to school. And today he's a CPA, right? So, listening to some of these stories appear, Joe, your family are immigrants. My family are immigrants as well. And I grew up in a third world country. So money was very a different, whole different ballgame. And then you put the fact that my father worked with his business, his family's business. But my dad is also bipolar with mania. So you're adding the mental health part now, and the manic part of the spending comes into play, right? So now there's the providing part, and then there's the part now where everything's disappearing. There's just the point is there are so many stories, so many journeys, but we all need money to live. And what I'm really loving about this conversation is that people seem to think that to talk men, money, and mental health and the pressures of the way money affects men as providers, money has to be something bad. Money is not something bad, right? And we have to recognize that it's the way that we value money, and what we choose to assign to it, and the way we allow that to affect us and men more so, because even today, even if the numbers have changed, men are still more so the providers in the house. So when a job gets lost, they are the main provider, and that pressure is there. You lose a job, you're already feeling like, oh crap, why was I cut? Was I not doing my job well? All those things. But now it's the back end of, are we going to lose the house? How am I going to pay rent? and things like, how am I going to put food on the table? Do I pay the light bill, or do I put food on the table? And men tend to internalize. We all know this. Hopefully, with these conversations, people start to see where they may, in fact, be um, causing the men in their lives to internalize by some of the things they are saying and doing, even if it's unintentional, right?
Mhm.
So, going to ask here in the comments another question of everyone. Growing up, would you say that your family had a poverty mindset? And do you feel that you have a poverty mindset today? There is no, in my opinion, shame or right or wrong answer, right? We are where we are. And for you guys here on stage, because we're going to be wrapping up in just about 7 minutes, I want to ask you, if there is a guy out there watching this right now who is going through something challenging and feels that he can't share this with someone, right?
Mhm.
Other than calling 988. Or what would you say to this person right now, as a man to a man who wrote in this book, other than, of course, please go buy and read the book. Um, you know, what would you say to them, as a friend, if it were a friend coming to you? Because, and I want you to say this, because men think that if they go to other men, they would not understand. They would not be empathetic.
Mhm.
They would not be able to uh, say, I feel you, and give you advice. They would judge you first. So I'm curious,
Mhm.
you handle that if somebody that's a friend to you comes to you. Either of you can take it.
I mean, I think Joe said it earlier. I think Aram said it earlier. Like if I saw a person in my life that was in need, whatever the definition of need, or in distress, um, and I say this in my coaching business and everything else, is like, don't judge a book by its cover. Like, you don't know what's going on underneath. Joe said that, right? And so I would say to that person, if you're not comfortable talking to me or another person close to you, then I would ask them to access, to your point, 988, or if it's serious enough, go to an emergency room, like, depending on the severity of the situation. But I would say to them, the benefits of owning your story and being vulnerable and asking for help are on the other side, but you have to take the first step. You do. I mean, people cannot force help on you. And so windows, doors, possibilities open, but you have to take the first step. And whether that's with a friend or a family member or a professional, there are options. I mean, there are options, and I would try and help them find the option that they're most comfortable with.
Yes, I love that. And thanks for saying it, because that's exactly what the back of this shirt says: breaking the stigma, owning my story. Because we have to own our story, right? All of us.
Yeah.
And if you can't pick up the phone and call 988, you feel like, listen, you're a complete stranger, this feels weird. Start doing some research on a therapist. You don't have to share with anybody that you're seeing the therapist. I'm not telling you to lie to your family, but I'm saying to you, I think it's okay, if you need help, to put yourself first and go talk to someone who is licensed to talk to you, so you can sort through certain things, in your head. And then you're going to find that you're in a place where you're more able to speak to the people around you that you really, need to be there for you. And so that is also part of the stigma. Men don't like to ask for help. Okay, you don't like to ask for help, especially from people you know. Well, you can certainly go ask for help from somebody that is trained to help you, and you're paying them to help you. It's just go get the help somewhere. And like Jim says, you have to want it more than anything else. And it's okay, to me, if that motivator of wanting it is because you want to be able to put the people around you at ease. Sometimes the motivator is not yourself to start, but as you start to heal, the motivator starts more and more to become yourself. Joe, what about you?
Agree.
What would you say to a guy out there right now that's facing a challenge and he's just internalizing, start having
Yeah.
that.
No, I think that, we've talked a lot about this, but I honestly think too that, some of us have gone to some deep, dark places. And I think that one of the things I'll tell you is that we're always worried about well, I think it's gotten better in the last 10 years, but I'd much rather people talk. I would give them advice similar to Jim. I'd much rather you talk to people, even if the people you talk to are judgmental or aren't the right people. You're getting it out there. I'd rather you talk to them and have an adverse reaction from a handful, because it's usually just a small group. If it's an adverse reaction, then you'd not be here anymore. So I think that we can get past the other parts of this. Like, if you live another day, we've all heard the stories of people who've been down and out and come back from that. It's when you get to that point, it's about taking it. The cliche is real. It's literally taking one day at a time and pushing yourself to keep going another day. I think that because it does get better, and it may not be perfect. Again, we all have things in our life that have affected it, but who cares if somebody doesn't like it? Who cares even if your boss does it? I'd much rather them be annoyed, or even if it's ridiculous as this, say that you're not welcome here. I'd rather that be the case than you're dead. So I know that's a little dramatic and a little drastic, but I've seen that side of it. I've been very fortunate to have men who are friends of mine who I'm able to talk to and who have reached out to me. And I have a really good friend at home and who knew I've gone through almost every single morning. I get a good morning from him. More than anyone else in my life, which is pretty funny. And we're like 1,500 miles away from each other now. But there are two people that I would, no doubt in my mind, if I knew that if I was going through like real men, they would just be there in a second. I think until you talk about it, like you said, Jim, you're not going to know. You may assume that they're not, but you'd be surprised.
Yeah, we often are surprised, and you don't know who is in your corner. And it's important to find out who is, because none of us can do it alone. There have been some really great comments, and I haven't had an opportunity to pull them up. I know we're a couple of minutes over, but I am going to, because I want to always thank the audience for being here and being engaging. The whole point of doing any of this is so that together we raise our voices and reach more people and encourage them to raise their voices as well to break these stigmas. So James Fielding, your stories about money growing up are absolutely priceless. By the way, I
So
remember those
funny.
Beatles Calvin Klein jeans.
They were a moment. They were a moment. Nick, I have to sign off though because I've got to go back to my training. But so nice seeing you, Joe. So good seeing you.
Yeah, we'll talk
I
soon,
know.
Jim. It'll be great.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys. So the guys are going to jump back in and answer some of these comments. I do want to let you know that I am seeing them. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, to support the guys, to support this movement of let us start talking about men's mental health more. The suicide rate is outrageous in men, and it's not right for men or women, but we have to do something to bring this down. There are so many things in our lives we want to do proactively. This is one of those things as human beings we have to do proactively as a society. Every single person has a responsibility, whether or not you choose to acknowledge that you do. And this is not putting blame on anyone else, but you have a responsibility quite simply because anybody else around you, you would want them to be responsible if you thought something was happening to one of your loved ones. and they said see something and didn't say something. So, Joe, with that, thanks for being here. We're going to sign off for tonight. Please scan the QR code, get your t-shirt, and look out for the launch event for this book. We're going to be launching in just a few short weeks. Have a wonderful night, everyone.